Hey everyone, and welcome back to Oasis Zoo. Today we have a bit of a quicker and surprisingly smaller build for the Aldabra giant tortoise. Now, while the Aldabra tortoise is native to Africa, specifically the Aldabra atoll, it's pretty far away from our desert location. So keeping that in mind, it's time for us to build a full indoor exhibit for our large tortoise friends. Now, I started with the framework of our exhibit, and I took a little bit of influence from the Oasis Zoo found in Denmark. Now, our exhibit is going to have two main entrances. Ideally, they would enter on the one side, flow through, and exit on the other. This would create one natural flowing guest path and avoid any congestion. For the viewing area, I've landed on the idea of building this faux porch fence. Really, this is to give the idea that you're viewing the Aldabra tortoise from a research center, looking into a whole new biome that's nowhere near the desert that we're in right now. To bring life to this vision, I built up our wood fence with a fun crossbeam, and this actually helps to support the structure. It also ended up giving it a little bit more of a unique look without too much work. Now, to finish it all off, I added in some rope pieces that act as the glue of the build, holding everything together. Now, with the base completed, I added some additional rope pieces to the support beams, really just helping to fill in some of the empty space and pulling everything together. Now that this is all done, it's time for us to start working on our actual exhibit. I wanted to continue the theme of creating these natural exhibits and started with our main water feature. Now, I will admit, off screen, I had to do a little bit of extra terraforming. Specifically, I had to lift the entire exhibit up just a little bit in order to make our small pool flush with the ground. Now, with all of that completed, I used some of our mossy rocks to add borders to the pool. I landed on the idea of using full moss rocks as I would assume that this area was going to be quite humid, meaning the moss would thrive on just about every surface that it can grow on. Now, because we are dealing with a smaller exhibit, we need to make every feature and surface count. To that end, I used a few mangrove and fern trees as a base for two main foliage features. To fill in the gaps, I added some scaevola bushes, strangler fig roots, bird's nest ferns, rhubarb plants, and Attenborough's pitcher plants. A mixture of these plants and roots actually turned out quite well in making it feel a little bit more lifelike. Funny enough, I was mentioning to some of the viewers just how bad I was with foliage, but honestly, I'm really happy with how this turned out. Now, while we see all of this come together, let's talk a little bit more about the Aldabra giant tortoise. These iconic turtles can grow to be as much as 900 pounds, or 408 kilograms depending on your metric style, and can live to be approximately 200 years old. I say approximately, as it's actually quite difficult to confirm their age. Now, because they can only be found on the Aldabra atoll, they've evolved independently and are a rather distinct species from other giant tortoises that we know. In fact, their closest relative is the Galapagos giant tortoise, having descended from a common ancestor at some point. Thankfully, the Aldabra atoll is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and is one of the largest coral atolls in the world. This status also means that some great conservation programs have been successful in helping their numbers recover and the species thrive. Now, these giant creatures are quite slow and very calm and gentle, something I think we've all seen before, which makes them quite popular in zoos and other educational centers. Now, being transparent, one thing I love about Planet Zoo is the wealth of knowledge that they share on animals. It's honestly quite fun to read all the facts about each animal and acts as a great way to learn. I know I had mentioned that at one point I was working towards joining the veterinary field and applying for an internship at the Toronto Zoo, and while it didn't work out, I love that I can build my own zoos within Planet Zoo and experience all the joys that come with that. Now, speaking of building, I tried a new tactic this episode, and really it was driven by the need to hide all the wood walls. I used some Bengal bamboo flipped upside down to create this bamboo-like forest wall. This helps to hide the wood, and later I also end up adding some moss rocks to the walls behind it. This not only hides all of the wood, but was a new technique that I hadn't really thought of using in the past. Now, all said and done, I made a really quick hard shelter, mostly built from moss-covered rocks, and then began to add some additional trees, roots, and elephant ear plants. Really, all this did was help to finish off the remainder of the interior foliage work and kind of brought everything together in a nice way. Of course, no habitat is complete without some type of education board, and once again, tried my hand at making something a little bit more custom than what we're used to. I started off with a traditional wood frame and used the Australian beams to create a backing, and then once this was done, I completed it using some of the conservation boards that ended up dyeing white. This helped to add a little bit of splash of color for the background. I used an info booth sign to draw some attention, and admittedly I would have liked for this to be a bit smaller, but we can work with this. In hindsight, I think we could have probably built our own, but hey, that's okay. It's all a learning experience. With the core details put together, and due to the lack of an Aldabra tortoise sign, I used some leaves and flowers to fill in the space. Finally, I added a title to the top, almost forgot about the space for that, and for something scratch built, this turned out quite well. Of course, there's always a few elements that I would change, but again, it's all in an effort to learn and improve. Now, once I landed on a color for the sign title, I placed it next to our main entrance, and which really is just the entrance I feel that the guests will use the most, and called it a day. Now, returning to the interior, we had to fill in a lot of the empty spaces. And what better way than to create our own little education center? Now, it would be normal with these types of exhibits to see something like this. Now, in reality, they would be a lot more interactive, and this is a new type of build for me, so if you have feedback or ideas on how to create a better interactive display, I'm all ears. That being said, using what I have, I placed down 2 more education boards and a large turtle sign to act as a backdrop. On the right, I added another scratch built board. In reality, this board would help to share additional facts such as life cycle, diet, and other similar facts for our guests to read. Now again, I added some leaves and flowers to add some more color to the entire build. Also, side note, for the longest time I had no idea how to build these types of boards, and I'm so thankful for finally figuring it out. I've actually found that it helps to download something from the workshop and then just pull it apart. It's amazing what you can learn when you deconstruct something to learn how it was built. Getting back to our sign, I made a frame with some conservation pieces and was actually pretty happy with the way it turned out. Now, with another info board down, I decided it was time for us to start work on making this habitat look a tad more inviting. I actually learned this particular type of build from a YouTube tutorial of all places. First, I started with some of the faux rocks, rotating and driving them a bit deeper to create more depth and a larger rock formation. To merge it with the ground, I used a large faux rock pebbles and worked them outwards, creating a pseudo rock garden to ease their transition to the larger pieces. Finally, I used a series of trees sunken into the ground and additional bushes to add some color. Overall, it acts as an inviting focal point to welcome the guests to our tropical exhibit. In fact, our desert zoo is expanding a bit more with some more unique animals found in Africa, and this may actually act as our new transition point for this section of Oasis Zoo. Now, the final part of the speed build is something I've never done before. Something I've struggled with in the past with these large buildings is finding a way to use up all of this empty space. To that end, I tried my hand at creating a little artwork on the walls. Between the trees, vines, and various flower signs, I managed to pull something together that is a first for me. Funny enough, I actually built this with a few Discord members watching. Speaking of our Discord, our community is slowly forming, and I encourage everyone to join. The goal is to create a fun environment where others can share tips and tricks and generally discuss all things Planet Zoo, among other games. We also have regular challenges such as Architect Showdown and our Community Zoo. So if you're interested in joining, feel free to follow the link in the comments below. Now we are approaching the end of the speed build, so I'm going to leave it here, but as always we will have a live tour to show off all the work we made today, so see you in just a few. Welcome to Aldabra Sanctuary, which is the name I'm going with temporarily for this exhibit. But if you have any recommendations for a better name, please let me know. But as you can tell, we've added a few more details to our build. Really just extended the rock work out a little bit, kind of hides the staff building over here for our cheetah exhibit, and kind of welcomes us in, so we're not seeing like no cliffs and stuff like that. So I'm quite happy with it. We've also set up a path for us to continue our zoo over there. You can kind of see it's already started planning out. If you have any recommendations for additional animals you want to see in this area, by all means, let me know in the comments below. But I am really happy with how this turned out. Number one, first time I ever found this door. It's kind of an exhibit walkthrough door. I've never really used them before, but I think it fits so well because we're trying to create this exhibit that's going to be a little bit cooler, because it has to be a little bit cooler than the desert that we're in right now. So I think it works out really well. And of course we have our custom built sign. Really happy with the way that turned out. And as you come in, you can see all the work that we've put in. Right off the bat, we have our education center. It's kind of bland right now. It's our first education center we've built. So again, if you have any recommendations, drop them in the comments. Let me know what you would have added, or if you have any tips or tricks for me, let me know. It's the best way to grow. We have our custom built info boards, and then of course we have the rest of the exhibit. But first I want to talk about something, the roof. I initially built this off of a photo of a exhibit in a Denmark zoo, and they had this really cool feature, and it almost looked like they were in a barn that was kind of like looking out into a whole new biome, and it was all indoors. It was really cool. So I really wanted to kind of continue this idea of having a man-made farm porch roof, and I felt that like the metal roof with some wood beams kind of holding it all together would work really well. And surprisingly, quite a struggle to put this together upside down, because essentially that's what we were doing. We were building everything from the ground up, and it was a struggle. So lesson learned, maybe plan for this a little bit better in the future. But this is our overall exhibit, and from this distance, from here, it looks really good. I'm really happy with how it turned out. Of course, we have a sprinkler kind of hiding in the center over there. We have some enrichment items, a lot of water features, some lily pads, things like that, and the roof, and it just, everything comes together. Even the bamboo just being upside down. I've never done trees upside down, and this is such a cool way of filling in the back walls. I've never really thought of doing that, and I'm quite happy with how this turned out. Now, of course, we have our back wall as well. You can kind of see our artwork is kind of extended all the way across. Again, something I've never done before, and I'm really happy with how this turned out. Just being able to see some like signs on the wall, it kind of like continues the forest feel, or that, you know, tropical feel. I really like the way this turned out. I'm very happy with it. Of course, we have some additional info boards I added in, really just a copy and paste from the one over there, made them a different size, stuff like that. So I cut it out of the video. I didn't think you guys really wanted to see us build the same thing 3 times in a row. Of course, we changed this one up a little bit. I have like some smaller lines to give a better idea. Like we have titles followed by info facts, whereas this one is just like a lot of words yelling at you. Oh, the other thing, I was recording. I was like, you know what? I could have built this info sign a little bit better myself. And look what I did. I built it myself. I'm quite proud of doing this. And it's not even an I, it's actually an apostrophe and a dot. So I'm really happy with building that myself. I am really sad though that there's no Aldabra sign, like animal sign. So we went with this terrapin instead. It's quite large and a little larger than I would want, but I think a turtle fits the entire theme of the build. Now we do have a backstage area that I didn't really show on build, more so because you've seen me build backstages a lot. And some of the feedback I've gotten was that the idea that we didn't really need to have all this backstage stuff over and over and over again. So of course we reused a lot of the additional initial infrastructure that we built. We have some of the items that were built by us, by our Discord members. So again, just want to say thank you so much to all those who have provided some blueprints, things like that. And then we have my blueprint that I made over here, which I'm really happy with. And that's about it. So it kind of all comes together. Now, when we go into the exhibit, we're just gonna kind of break some rules here. I did cover the door with the bamboo, and my thought process behind this is it would be normal for a zoo to kind of create a faux door that would mix in with the rest of the build. And this is to kind of create that semblance that nothing really exists there. So there has to be a door. We know that, but we can't really cover it up completely because it doesn't really make sense. I thought about putting a rock there, but I kind of like having the door so you can kind of see it still. So the bamboo kind of fits with the entire idea. Now, when we kind of step back and we look at it from the inside, this really does look like a porch, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out. It looks quite spectacular. And I just want to take a moment and admire the foliage. I think this is by far the best job I've ever done at foliage, ever. I think I've spent a lot more time, added some more giant rhubarb plants over there, but I spent a lot of time in getting this together. Even the fallen log, the way I have it set up, initially I went with some pine trees and just didn't work that well. So I ended up using these logs that I found in the construction menu, and then I added some vines like kind of wrapping over it. I'm so proud of myself. We have dead leaves over here. I'm so happy with the way this turned out. Even, oh man, it looks so much better than anything I've ever built before. And that makes me so happy because that means it's everything that I've done is worth it. It all came together with this, what I believe is a fantastic build. Of course, it's not a fantastic build when it comes to some other people, but it's all in an effort to learn. And again, this is all I've ever wanted to do, is just to learn to be a better Planet Zoo builder. So I'm really happy with how this turned out. Now, in a normal world, our guests would exit out of this door right here, and then we would kind of continue on our journey. We would see over here, and we'd see the rest of the exhibits that we want to build up. So again, if you have any recommendations for what you want to see added to the zoo, let me know. I am definitely here to hear your feedback. Now, one last thing I am going to talk about is the roof. This is the first time I've ever used a roof with this like opaque glass, and I didn't want to have a full thatch roof, more so because the flat thatch pieces look terrible. So I went with these opaque glass windows, and I'm really happy with how this turned out. It actually looks like a real indoors exhibit, because most indoor exhibits, they're indoor. They're not really like set up like this. It's you definitely know you're in a building. So this kind of just it feeds into that vibe. And I'm so happy with how this turned out. And the water features, oh man, just super happy. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot. We set up a little terrarium. I was looking right at it, totally forgot. We added a terrarium. Now, ideally, we would put some other small creatures like, I don't know, geckos, things like that. They would kind of hang out in here. The glass would go up a little bit higher. We don't have the ability to do that. So instead, it's just a plant terrarium, and it works. I'm really happy with it. It's not overflowing with a bunch of plants. It's very man-made and, planned out. You can see that with all the plants kind of symmetrical and not symmetrical. It's not the right word, but you know what I mean. They're all in order, and that's the goal. It was just to kind of create something man-made. This is definitely a very man-made area. So that's it. I'm really happy with the overall quality of this build. Of course, if you are happy with this build, or if you're happy with the direction of the channel, stuff like that, feel free to subscribe. It lets me know that I'm doing a good job, and I really appreciate it. You can also hit the like button, leave a comment. All of those things matter to me, and I do my best to respond. I will admit I was a little delayed in the last few videos, and that's my fault. I got distracted by some other games, but I'm back. I'm back and ready to play and ready to go with some more Planet Zoo. In fact, we are going to be building in tandem with our new zoo, Cedar Brook Park Zoo, which is going to be more of a hyper-realistic zoo. So a lot more work is going to definitely go into that one, because we're taking everything we've learned in Oasis Zoo and Ottawa Zoo and putting it to task in Cedar Brook Park Zoo. So I'm really excited about that. It's still being built in franchise mode, which is still a struggle, I'm not going to lie, but very, very happy with what we've achieved here. As always, I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you for all of the support. I really appreciate it. And ciao for now, everybody.